January 11th, 2025, in the Pokrovsk region of eastern Ukraine. Two Ukrainian special operations snipers crawl into their positions equipped with suppressed long-range rifles, thermal optics, and ghillie suits. A Russian patrol had walked the same path one too many times, and now tonight was going to be their last. In a war where drones circle day and night and artillery pounds the earth into gravel, there are still missions that happen in the silence, where small two-man sniper teams in the dead of night make all the difference in the world. This was a disruption mission, not an assault. The task was simple on paper. Find a predictable patrol, pick the cleanest window, and turn routine into delay. Defense intelligence spotted a cadence, small foot patrols using the same track at the same hour. That pattern is a liability. Predictability is an exploitable weakness. The goal wasn't to hold ground, it was to change the enemy's behavior. The area of Pokrovsk matters because of the roads and the funnels. Open fields, hedgerows, drainage ditches, and a few dirt tracks. Nothing dramatic on a map, but everything that matters for a two-man element. In winter, those micro features become decisive. A ditch that swallows a silhouette, a hedge that masks movements, or a stretch of track that forces soldiers to bunch up. You don't need a valley to make an ambush, you need geometry that turns movement into a target. The element assigned to this operation was deliberately small: 2 men. Two-man teams minimize signature, simplify decision flow, and keep exfil flexible. Trust is absolute. With that profile, the mission emphasis is on timing, concealment, and precision of effect. Intelligence built the play, pattern of life reporting, a mix of human intelligence, local observation, and sensor cues showed the patrol windows, formation, tendencies, and their likely routes. That allowed planners to choose a night when the geometry would be favorable, a patrol that habitually compressed at a certain choke point in the terrain, a slope that framed targets against a colder backdrop for thermal clarity, and escape lanes that offered quick, covered withdrawal. The decision to act balanced detection risk, expected effect, and available exfil options. This wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. Thermal optics completely changed the equation. Night was no longer a refuge, it was a readable picture. Heat blooms on a screen, and people become discrete signatures. That does not replace tradecraft, it amplifies the value of discipline. Using thermal gives you information, range, count, movement, but it also creates dependencies, battery life, resolution limits, and a reliance on signature discipline so you don't become the obvious bright spot. The team planned around those limits. Spare batteries were kept warm, observation windows were short, and their positive ID protocols were strict. Concealment and signature management were central to this operation. Ghillie suits and low reflective layers minimized visual cues. Straps and weapon slings were taped down to prevent accidental noise in the wind. Position selection emphasized depressions and scrub that broke outline. Their rifles were wrapped to reduce reflective glint, and their comms were lean, pre-arranged, encrypted, and used only when necessary. Every choice reduced the chance of these operators being compromised behind enemy lines, because if they were found, there was no one coming to save them. The engagement plan was entirely geometry at first. The team identified funnels where patrols naturally compressed into tighter groups. A narrow track, a hedgerow pinch, a shallow dip that forced reduced spacing. Those moments of compression turned several individual heat signatures into an exploitable cluster. The tactic was to wait for the cluster, use a controlled first shot to stop motion, and then deliver limited follow-ups to prevent organized return return fire, then vanish. The objective is disruption, to force immediate defensive action and long-term caution on these routes, not to take out as many enemy fighters at once. The risk trade-offs were explicit. 2 operators limit exposure but also limit staying power and recovery options. That makes exfil planning critical. Primary and secondary routes, ORPs, and contingency timing for delayed extraction. Medical planning is minimal but focused on immediate life-saving tools. The doctrine here assumes avoidance of contact is better than fighting to extract. What success looks like on this operation isn't anything flashy. It's a patrol slowed. A convoy leaves a bit later. A commander reroutes because the cost of routine movement has increased. Those are measurable operational effects. Time lost, resources diverted, and a tightening of the enemy's options. A single clean interdiction buys operational friction, and friction is currency in attrition warfare. And on the night of January 11th, 2025, countless hours of preparation for this operation was about to pay off. The 2 operators crawled into their positions overlooking the enemy's patrol route. Their ghillie suits caused them to vanish into the environment around them. They sat there in the cold for hours, watching in silence, waiting for the enemy to come down this road. And then finally, after what felt like an eternity, the enemy arrived. They watched them closely and silently as they unknowingly walked right into the kill zone. And just as they had planned in this specific choke point, the enemy bunched up like fish in a barrel, unaware of the crosshairs hovering over them. And then in an instant, the silence was broken. The first sound is not what people expect. It isn't a crack like in the movies. It's a controlled report, then an immediate collapse of movement. One man goes down, and then the entire patrol fractures into separate, disoriented pieces. That one single impact does the job the team came to do. It stops the enemy's movement, breaks cohesion, and forces the enemy into a frantic accounting of who's still up and who's down. The enemy's reaction is instant and messy. Trained soldiers try desperately to grab some control in the chaos. And that gap between practice and panic is the window the Special Operations Sniper Team exploits. Follow-up fire is tight and purposeful. Not a spray, not an attempt at a spectacle, but precise corrections to deny the patrol any organized return. But because of the operators' suppressed weapons, ghillie suits, and the cover of darkness, the Russian patrol has no idea what direction they're even taking fire from. And so, in the chaos, the Ukrainian snipers continue to send suppressed rounds downrange, dropping the Russian soldiers one after the other. But they intentionally don't drop every Russian soldier. Instead, they leave some alive, using the enemy's panic and confusion as cover for their withdrawal. The Russian soldiers scrambling for any cover they can find, trying desperately to call for help over the radio, and also providing medical aid to themselves and their wounded teammates, is all the noise and chaos the Ukrainians need to slip away into the darkness unnoticed. The exfil is as important as the strike itself. In a matter of seconds, their kit is secured, any obvious signs of their positions are masked, and movement begins under the cloak of the patrol's own confusion. The team's exit is designed to erase the moment as much as it created it, to leave the scene looking ordinary so the enemy cannot easily reconstruct where the interruption came from. What the attack accomplished is immediate and lasting, a patrol that no longer moves the same way, a convoy schedule that slips, a commander who assumes the next run will be heavily contested. The visible violence is short, the invisible consequences stretch longer and are the true payoff of the operation. When the shooting stopped, the field went quiet again, not because nothing happened, but because everything that mattered already had. 2 operators packed up, checked each other, and moved out the same way they arrived. Silent, low, and unseen. No rush, no victory lap, just discipline and distance. Back on the Russian side, the reaction was predictable. A patrol that expected a routine night now had casualties to account for. Radios lit up, movement slowed, and units that were already stretched thin had to shift focus to security, not momentum. A handful of seconds had just rewritten hours of planning for the enemy. And that's the point of operations like this. You don't need a massive assault or a battalion pushing a line to change the tempo. Sometimes all it takes is two professionals, the right terrain, and a lot of patience. The goal wasn't to hold ground, it wasn't to rack up numbers, it was to send a message. This route is no longer safe, this timing is no longer guaranteed, and nothing you repeat in this war is ever routine. That's what modern precision warfare looks like. Small units, smart decisions, and targeted pressure that forces the enemy to hesitate, redeploy, and rethink. A quiet shot in the dark that makes a general somewhere shift his schedule by 12 hours. That's leverage. That's true value.
Закрыто.
This wasn't a battle you'd find on any map. There were no tanks rolling down the street, no artillery thundering overhead, and no massive airstrikes lighting up the sky. Just a small team of Ukrainian special operators, silent, camouflaged, and waiting in the trees. For the Russian soldiers, the area of Bakhmut had become hell on earth, but this operation was going to take things to a whole nother level. In early 2023, this Russian unit was about to walk straight into the arms of death without ever seeing it coming. The team on the ground belonged to Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, the SSO, highly trained, battle-hardened experts in reconnaissance, sabotage, and when the opportunity arose, ambush warfare. They've been watching the same path for days, logging Russian movements, counting personnel, timing patrols, waiting for a window where the enemy got complacent. And now, the trap was set. But the operators weren't completely alone. They had eyes in the sky. Through the grainy white hot of the thermal drone camera, we can see a convoy of Russian vehicles and infantry, at least a dozen strong, weaving through the woods just outside a rural position north of Bakhmut. They're armed, but scattered. No spacing, no overwatch, and no idea. This wasn't just a lucky catch, it was a deliberate setup. The SSO had chosen the terrain carefully. A natural L-shaped choke point was formed by tree cover and a rise in elevation, making the perfect kill zone. And now, the Russians were right in the middle of it. On the ground, the SSO team waited behind fallen logs and makeshift brush blinds. One operator was on a squad automatic weapon, another had a grenade launcher preloaded. The rest carried short-barreled rifles, compact, fast, and lethal. There were no shouted commands, no radio chatter, just a hand signal, a breath, and then fireworks.
Давай, Жень, кабинчик. Sabırlı, sabırlı. Всегда и сахар ушел, что ли?
Gunfire erupted like thunder. The first 2 Russian soldiers dropped instantly. A third spinned and screamed before a grenade burst beside him, sending shrapnel into his neck. The vehicles quickly stepped on the gas and attempted to gun it through the kill zone, but the Ukrainians hammered them with small arms fire, quickly disabling them. From the drone feed, it looked surgical, but from the ground, it was total chaos. One Russian soldier tried to dive behind a tree. He never made it. A clean shot punched straight through his chest. Another stumbled backwards into the woods, firing his AK blindly behind him, hoping he could escape. But a round from a Ukrainian rifle quickly caught up to him. The ambush was over in less than 90 seconds. Not a single Ukrainian was hit. And just like that, they all quietly held their positions in the woods for just a few minutes, making sure there weren't any more stragglers coming up the hill behind the Russian soldiers. And with the drone overhead quickly confirming no more heat signatures in the area, the Ukrainians pushed out from their positions and began searching the bodies and vehicles. The forest was completely quiet. No more gunfire, no movement, just smoke, dirt, and the cooling bodies of Russian soldiers. Through the drone's thermal camera, the heat signatures told the story clear as day. Bodies scattered along the tree line like broken chess pieces. But the SSO team didn't stick around to celebrate. No way to know for sure if one of the Russian soldiers managed to get a call out for reinforcements. They quickly swept the area under the cover of overwatch from the drone above, grabbing intel off the bodies, taking anything useful. Radios, maps, notebooks, phones, even patches. Every scrap of data could lead to their next ambush. Then they quickly disappeared back into the thick woods like they were never there. Back at the SSO forward base, the footage from the overhead drone was downloaded and analyzed frame by frame. What they found confirmed what they already suspected. This wasn't an elite Russian unit, it was a mix of poorly trained and lightly armed Russian infantry and Wagner mercenaries. Their spacing was non-existent. Their reaction time was slow, and worst of all, they walked straight into a terrain choke point without ever sending a scout. They never had a chance. All in all, 13 Russian soldiers were confirmed dead and multiple vehicles were destroyed with 0 Ukrainian casualties. It was a perfectly executed ambush, but for the Ukrainian Special Operations soldiers, it was just another day in Bakhmut. Several hours later, when more Russian soldiers arrived on scene and recovered the bodies, they found a single patch stitched in Ukrainian blue and gold left on one of the fallen Wagner fighters. No words on the patch, but the message was clear as day. You are not alone in these woods. In the following days after the ambush, Russian patrols in the area changed dramatically. Troop movement slowed, infantry units were pulled back and replaced with artillery and drones. That one engagement, one precise, brutal trap in the forest had disrupted an entire sector of the front. A small team of Ukrainian snipers from the Kraken battalion drove to the city of Vovchansk. They hid their vehicle just outside and quickly traveled deeper into the city on foot, eventually reaching their target building. The team carefully cleared the building and then set up shop in one of the rooms on the top floor. They moved furniture around and hung up camo netting over the windows to build the perfect sniper hide. Once the setup was done, 2 soldiers held rear security by the stairwell to make sure no one came up behind them, while the rest of the team grabbed their rifles and started hunting. It's unclear right now what the overall goal of this operation was. I don't think they were hunting a specific person. You can see them set up with notepads and cameras and radios, so it's likely they were there for more of a reconnaissance role and just were taking shots when the opportunity popped up. It's also likely that part of their goal was to just scare Russian troops. If they take several sniper shots and drop a couple Russian soldiers and then dip out of the area, for the next several days, every Russian soldier in that city is going to be terrified of snipers. Just having Russian troops knowing that there were recently snipers active in the area slows down all troop movements for several days. But that's all just speculation. It's really not clear what exactly the overall goal of this operation was. You can, however, see here in the footage that they do drop multiple Russian soldiers. After taking their shots and dropping a few targets, it was time to leave. The shots from their rifles had now given away their position, and it wouldn't be long until they were surrounded. So they packed up all of their gear and quickly made their way down the stairs and out of the building. Thankfully, the sun was going down and they would soon have the cover of darkness to help them escape the city. But you can see in the footage that as they're running out, they start taking shots from nearby Russian soldiers.
В ангар!
And thankfully they were able to lose the Russian soldiers pursuing them and quickly made their way back to their vehicle heading out of the city. Their goal was, it seems to be a success. They dropped multiple targets and made it out of the city without taking any casualties.